Elon's amazing We Robot announcements, plus hope after hurricanes, and the prophetic Hebrew year of 5785. I'm John Matarazzo for charismanews.com, and these are your top stories. Last night, Elon Musk had the We Robot announcement, I guess. I mean, he had a lot of things going on, and James Lasher's joined me to talk about this. We were both kind of blown away by some of the technology, but also what are the implications about this? So, James, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me again, John.
Well, first, let's take a look at some of the things that he introduced, and we're going to talk about this. I love the beginning of this whole presentation because they didn't just do it in a theater; they did it on a movie set. It looks like the Back to the Future type Back to the Future type neighborhood. Here, Elon Musk is walking out with a SpaceX astronaut and going to some great music, and he gets into a new Tesla vehicle. And so he gets in the passenger side, which is interesting, and you can see right through it that there is no driver. So this is part of the new things that he is introducing. James, what are your thoughts about this whole event so far?
You know, I think the title of the event really in and of itself is pretty unique, calling it We Robot. And anybody who has seen the movie that's based off of, iRobot, knows, you know, without being too pessimistic, things don't go exactly as planned as the world introduces robots and robotics into the everyday citizen's life. And so I really hope it's not going to go down that kind of road. You know, it's easy to look at the bad side of it. While it's really an incredible advancement of technology, my question is, who's going to be in control of this? Because Elon Musk isn't going to be around forever. And in these science fiction movies, it's always the next guy. It's always the next executive council that takes the original good idea for something and turns it into something a little more sinister.
So here we see that this car that Elon is a passenger in is going through this city, and there was just some bikers that went by, and it's demonstrating that it stopped on its own. And now he's going to get onto the stage, and this is a little bit of a longer clip, but it's, you know, he gets onto the stage and then shows the We Robot logo behind him, which I think, I mean, it definitely has this HAL 3000 feel to it. Which is a little scary in my opinion, but at the same time, it is fascinating that here we have Elon Musk, who is obsessed with the possibility of the future. And James, before I want to show kind of the visualization of what his dream is. But you brought up an interesting point about that Elon is not in control. I mean, he got into the passenger side of the car, so he's not in control right then. He's currently in control, but the next generation of leaders is something we kind of have to worry about.
Yeah, and when you think about it, putting on the biblical lenses, how do we discern this? You know, back decades ago, the world of tomorrow was an uplifting and optimistic thing, but unfortunately, we've seen over the years, it's not really turning into that. And so looking at it through a biblical lens as of who is going to control this, how will you get into the car? You know, will we see something like the social credit scores start to take effect? And then will access to these vehicles be limited? You know, and you kind of get the image of, do you have to wave your hand over a scanner to gain access? Are you on a list? And what really just stuck out to me is, as more things become automated, like Elon is talking about, not from a, you know, seditious perspective, but control, which is something we know Satan really wants control of the world. Is this something that could be implemented in some form as we see a mark of the beast system take effect, as AI continues to advance by leaps and bounds just in the last 2 years? We've seen this. Well, how much more in the next 5 to 10? And again, not trying to look at this from a pessimistic standpoint, but from a discerning standpoint. Anything that can be used for bad, a lot of times will. We've seen it with the internet. It brought amazing advancements in communication, but it also brought some really negative side effects with global communications through trafficking and other really things that were bad for society and culture as a whole.
Yeah. So let's take a look at. I'm going to play this video here. We can talk over it, but the kind of the vision that Elon has is taking parking lots and turning them back into green spaces. And with the advent of these, or the invention of these cars and actually buses that he shows, and we'll show that in
Hmm.
just a moment. It's reclaiming these parking lots into green spaces. And so people are excited about the green movement, getting, loving nature.
Hmm.
And there's good things to that, but we need to
Absolutely.
be careful about, are you worshiping the creation or worshiping the creator? And
Right.
so I do like the idea of, not having as many parking lots, that because we're not needed.
Hmm.
Um, Now we currently do need them, but I really appreciate Elon's vision for the future. I think it's fascinating. And so here he introduced another.
Creates
Uh, let's see if I can. I'll just go forward a little bit here. He's introducing this fleet of buses
so
that you
that
can
would
fit
be
like 20
quite
some people
fantastic.
in them.
Oh, and
Hmm.
And so
also,
he's not just talking about,
what happens if you need
a
a
great
vehicle
idea.
that's
He's actually saying
bigger
here's
than
ways
normal
that he
line?
wants to try to make this happen. And so we'll see what actually happens. But here you can see that there's about 20 people get out of this, and it's very Art Deco style future, which is I'm a huge fan of that. I love the movie The Incredibles
Yeah.
and the styles and everything from that. But I do find it very interesting, some of those features. And he also had this. Let's put this up here. Yeah, of course he has to have a drone display somewhere in that whole featured. But here's the bus and the cyber taxi, or the robo taxi, and just some interior looks that I've found from the Tesla's Twitter account, or X account, sorry. And you can see that they like these interacting with the world.
Hmm.
No pedals, no steering wheels. Very, very interesting there. James, what's your thoughts about those?
I think Elon's doing a really great job of trying to put some hope back in the future. Things
Yeah.
have been dreary, to say the least. Let's say at least the last 3.5 years. But like you said, the whole style of this, it's making people excited for the future. And hope is a good thing, absolutely. And ultimately our hope is found in Jesus Christ. But have people really have a positive outlook on the future recently as inflation goes up, things along that nature? But again, looking at both sides of it, having hope for the future, but what kind of impact could an autonomous fleet of buses have? Some urban centers in the United States have tried using autonomous vehicles, and unfortunately, in a moral society, they might work, but we've seen crime rise in these urban centers so much that a lot of these have been destroyed. Delivery robots, autonomous
Mm,
cabs, and things of that nature, they get tagged. I've seen videos of people coming up and tagging the windshields, tagging the sides of the
spray
doors.
painting it, yeah.
Exactly. And we don't know if our society will be able to handle these advancements in a productive manner. We hope that we do, but we've seen the moral fabric kind of disintegrate
Right.
over the decades. But I think Elon is really doing a good job as he's fighting for free speech, as he's fighting for freedoms in general, with his endorsement of Donald Trump, along with several other prominent former Democrats. Let's bring some actual joy back into society and culture. Let's be excited for something and be happy, because this kind of dour cloud that's been over America has been here far too long, and it's time that we do something about it. We stand up and speak against the negative aspect of things and try to bring some hope back to the American citizenry.
Yeah, and a big part of the inspiration for a lot of these autonomous vehicles is safety.
Yeah.
There's a lot of accidents that happen on the roads. I've been a victim of an accident. I got hit by a drunk driver several years ago. Not fun. And if these types of autonomous vehicles can stop those accidents from
Mhm.
happening, that's a great thing. Now, always, if something can be used for good, how can it be used for evil? And how can we prevent that? I like the vision that Elon is putting out there, but how can that be manipulated? How can that be taken advantage of? And as you brought up earlier about, who's going to be in control of Tesla after Elon?
Right.
Generations from now, is that going to be controlled by a board that has other ideas? Or, right now Elon is I guess you could call him a freedom fighter. He bought Twitter, turned it into X, and used it as a free speech platform, which in some ways is encouraging. In other ways, it's really discouraging to see the type of things that people are actually free and they're speaking.
Mhm.
Some things are very negative and not very good, but it's like, okay, you at least have that opportunity there. So things are going to be used for good and for evil.
Right.
What is the future actually going to look like, though?
Well, I think you said the word again, it's control. Who is going to control this? Who is going to implement it into other sections of society? Because it's not just going to stay in like, a little cab kind of pocket, if you will, of society. Those buses, Elon even said during the presentation, they can be used for transportation. And
Mhm.
so what you see then is the possibility of the replacement of the truck drivers in America. And there's over 3 million truck drivers. And so what kind of impact would that have on the not just society, but the economy as well? Because they would have to find new jobs potentially, but also as autonomy becomes more of a thing in America, not just American culture, but worldwide. Chinese ports are already by and large autonomous. When we just saw the dock worker and longshoreman strike have an immense impact when they said, well, we aren't going to work for 2 weeks. And the head of the union even said, I can make this painful for you. So what kind of impact will that have in the future for the economic impact against not just the United States, but the world as a whole? And then who would control this? It
Mhm.
all comes back to control for me. That is the biggest thing that I don't want to say I worry about, but I think about when people
Right.
bring up an automatic, autonomous
Yeah.
society like Elon has, but he's on the good side of thinking about it, but there's always then the other side of the pendulum when it swings
Exactly.
the other way. People who have nefarious ideas for this technology and to use it for corrupt means.
Yeah. Well, we've just been talking about the things on the street and outside the
Mhm.
home, but let's look and
But
see
with arms and
what they've
legs
been
instead of a
doing
robot
inside
with
the home.
wheels.
Uh, Here's a
And
fleet
we've
of
made a lot of progress.
what are they calling it? Optimus
We have
robots.
the Optimus.
Which great name.
And,
I love
as you can see,
Transformers.
we started
Those
with someone,
movies and the
in a
cartoons
robot suit.
were awesome. But here you can
With
see
that. And
these
then
robots
we
are walking
progressed
very
dramatically
much
year
like
after
a
year.
human,
Mhm.
more like a
So if
human
you
than anything that
extrapolate
I've
this,
seen in my
you're really gonna
lifetime.
have something
And they look very much like the movie, like from the movie I, Robot. And
but
here you can
fundamentally
see them
at
interacting
scale,
in the home,
the
picking
Optimus
up a
robot, you should be able to
package,
buy an
delivery
Optimus
package,
robot
watering plants,
for
kind of
probably $20,000 to
playing with
$30,000
the
a month.
family.
So
Mhm.
and what can it do?
It's
It'll be able to do anything you want.
I've actually seen some
Whatever you can think
videos of
of,
people that were
it
actually
will
at
do.
the event interacting
And
with
yeah, it's gonna
these
be awesome.
humanoid robots.
I think
And
this will
these are
be
not people in a
the
suit,
biggest product
as some
ever of any kind.
hoaxes have been in the past.
Yeah.
But there's some very interesting things that are happening with that, and they're very lifelike. And James, would you let one of those in your home?
Yeah, absolutely not. But that's just me. I know a lot of people be like, "Oh, you're just scared of it." Not necessarily. It's not for me because when you see people interact with these things, they kind of take a life of their own on, and we need to remember these are not alive things. And how much does AI play into this? And a lot of people are either one way, the other, or they're kind of indifferent about AI. But a lot of people are just like, "I want nothing to do with it," while others are like, "This is the way of the future." Well, let's take a look at these robots. Are they being AI driven? Are they controlled? And you're letting it into your house, meaning they need to have scanners and sensors. They will see everything. You won't have privacy. And that's a big thing for me. It is very important I have two small children. And one of the things that Elon and the company said these robots could do was babysit your children. And for me personally, never going to happen as long as I'm alive. I don't want this thing with scanners and sensors possibly mapping out my home. It might be used again by somebody who's not Elon Musk, who might take control later to say, well, do they have weapons in the house? Could it be used against you, like the recordings these robots would have against you in a court of law if, let's say, you stand on biblical values, traditional biblical values, and people say, well, your child wants to potentially transition, and they then use recordings against you in a court of law. It's just there's too much, and then my mind starts kind of spiraling in all the different ways in a negative fashion, and I don't want that negativity in my life. But for me, not a chance, no way am I letting that thing across the door frame.
Yeah, I don't think I would either at this point. But the cars and the buses definitely look interesting, and I'm hopeful that our society might be able to turn around and be moral enough that they could, hopefully Christian, but definitely moral, to be able to actually sustain this type of a future. Right. The future looks bright, but it also looks bleak if we don't have Jesus Christ. And I just want to encourage everybody. I'd love to hear your thoughts about these announcements at the We Robot convention. That would you let a robot inside your home? Would you trust a totally autonomous vehicle? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And we really appreciate that. James, any thoughts as we're wrapping up here?
I think during these times, we just need to use discernment. You know, technology in and of itself is not a bad thing. But when you have people programming AI with certain biases, when you have people in positions of power that goes against the ways of God, that goes against the ways the Bible tells us how to live and how creation is, it becomes a problem. And when this technology is in every facet of society, in every corner of culture, you need to be on your toes. You need to be wise as serpents while harmless as doves. And we need to listen to the words of Jesus when he talks about discerning the times, but also being prepared, to be prepared for the return of the bridegroom. That is a big thing for me personally, is being prepared for the day that Jesus comes back. And so I think for a lot of people who might be uncertain, spend time in the Word, spend time in prayer, and ask the Lord for discernment, and he will answer your prayers.
And that is always good advice. Spend time in the Word and you will be prepared. James, thanks so much for joining us here on Charisma News. Prayers for peace. The missing fiancé passes in the wake of Helene's destruction. John Norwood, 32, is one of those who continues to ask for prayer after the horrific floodwaters in Marion, North Carolina, swept both him and his fiancée away. Norwood says that it happened so fast. All I remember is a bunch of crashing noises, and then I was underwater, and that was it. He went on in this article. He goes on to tell more details of this, but we've been given an update about his fiance, saying, "It is with heavy heart that we share the passing of John's fiance, Julie. Unfortunately, she did not survive the storm. We take comfort in knowing she is at peace and no longer suffering. Julie was such a kind-hearted soul, absolutely a match made in heaven for John. Now we must learn to navigate life without her." It's very sad, the loss of life from this Hurricane Helene, and we will continue to pray for John as he's recovering the loss of his fiance and the life that they would have had together. There's a GoFundMe to help pay for some of the expenses that they've incurred as well. Please keep them and all of the victims from Hurricane Helene in your prayers. Now, Hurricane Helene wasn't the only one. Milton just passed, and we talked about this earlier this week. It just passed several miles south of where I am here in Orlando. But before it actually hit the shore, the eye wall seemed to break, and it did not damage the Tampa or the coast as bad as they were predicting. They did get up to a Category 5, but it did not continue that way. But earlier this week, we shared about, is Hurricane Milton the prophetic storm of the century? Charlie Shamp shared a dream that he had about this. And you can read all of this in the description, in the article, which is linked in the description. Chris Reed had a vision about this as well, and there's posts with this. So we're always looking to see what has God been saying. And here Michael Snyder in this article, did Hurricane Milton have help becoming one of the most powerful storms in history? Thank God it lost its power before it hit landfall, but it was still very bad in a lot of areas. During regular times, he says, a hurricane is not supposed to go from a Category 1 to Category 5 in less than a day. He has some very interesting theories and thoughts about what might have caused the hurricane to rapidly increase that quickly. I've seen the clip that he's referring to here. One meteorologist was literally on the verge of tears as he discussed how powerful the storm was becoming and looking at the impending doom. And Michael Snyder wrote that a lot of people had been searching for Category 6 hurricane on Google, and USA Today published an entire article that speculated that a hypothetical Category 6 could soon be added to the scale that we use to measure storms, which is scary. So he proposes some very interesting ideas in here that you might want to read, because I can't really talk about on YouTube. And he talks about some things that have happened over in the United Arab Emirates that they have been able to do to help create some man-made rain. And there's other things that you just would like to be aware about. That's all I'm going to say with this article, because I don't want it to get us in trouble. Now, Jenny Weaver, who lives in Florida as well, she had a prophetic message to people about Hurricane Milton. She said, I have an urgent word concerning the upcoming storms, the turmoil that is happening right now with rumors of wars and all things happening. The word of the Lord that I am hearing in my spirit is, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. She goes on to say in the post, in the video that she posted on social media, which you can click the link and watch that here. In the article, she says, you've got to stop being in fear. We're going to do our part, but my trust is not in the boarding of the windows. My trust is not in the panic shopping and stockpiling of toilet paper. There are people who just need to come out of this fear. Fear is something that we can't let it overtake us. And thank God that the storm was not worse as they were predicting. The Hebrew year 5785 is getting a lot of people's attention, and Rabbi Kurt Landry says that this is the time to appoint the kings and priests. In this video that he shares, is about preparing now. What is the prophetic meaning of 5785? This is the year of the king priest anointing. What happens this year is pivotal for the next 10 years. Now, he also brings up some interesting things about the fall feast, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. They are God's appointed times for us to reflect, repent, and reset. They are divine appointments for everyone in God's kingdom. By observing them, you position yourselves to hear from the Lord more clearly and receive the provision he has stored up for you this new year. Now, you can go to the article here by clicking the link in the description, and you can read more of what Rabbi Landry has to say there. As we're preparing for what's to come next, make sure that we are seeking the Lord. Make time that you take time and seek him and on how you're supposed to move forward. Don't let yourself be overcome by fear, but rest in him. I'm John Matarazzo for charismanews.com. These are your top stories of the week. God bless you.